Welcome, dreamer. Tonight, the modern mystic invites you to let go of the hurry in your mind. Slow down, drift in, and take your seat. Here, in the gentle space between waking and sleep. As blankets settle across your shoulders and the world tilts softly away from the noise, there is nothing left for you to do but listen, breathe, and remember, nothing urgent, nothing pressing. Just the hush of a room with low lights, the quiet creak of an old chair, the subtle scent of tea leaves curling up from a chipped cup. Outside, the night leans against the window, fog pressed close to the glass. You are safe here, safe enough to drift, safe enough to loosen your hold on everything unfinished. In the gentle tide that carries you tonight, let yourself rest on the softest edge of awareness, as if lying in the shallow end of a warm, slow sea. Imagine a suitcase, old and sturdy, waiting at the foot of a simple bed. Ram Dass stands in the silvery half-light of a quiet evening, palm hovering above that weathered bag. He moves gently, as though time has grown thick around him, as though the air itself says, "Not yet, not yet." The kettle sings softly in the kitchen. The slippers by the door rest in their ordinary patience. Nothing is rushed. Everything is exactly as it should be. And you are right here, welcomed without question into this human quiet. The room is filled with a different sort of silence, the kind only found on nights when the world recedes into corners and becomes background, blurry, unimportant. The silver of the moon catches on a single glass of water, turning it to a well of liquid light. His breath is slow. Your breath is slow. The story is already beginning, and there is nothing to fix or perfect. He waits by the window. A single moth taps the glass, then drifts away on a ribbon of cold air, unhurried. The spoon clinks gently against the cup in his hand. A pause, another breath, the lull of repetition that dissolves questions. Tonight, we're not reaching for answers. We aren't listing accomplishments or tracing timelines. We're just walking slowly through a patch of very old fog, lingering in moments and memories as soft as worn linen. He settles onto the edge of the bed, eyes traveling from the battered suitcase to the slippers to the pool of moonlight gathering on the rug. His hands rest, loose and humble, in his lap. You don't need to pay attention. There is no test at the end. Only the hush of steady storytelling and the comfort of being gently accompanied, like wandering with an old friend whose only wish is that you feel safe enough to close your eyes and drift inward. You may notice how, even before he unfolds a single piece of clothing or tucks a toothbrush into a side pocket, there's a sacred pause, a sacred slowing. He listens to the room. He moves as if memory is a soft coat to slip into, rather than a burden to carry or a problem to solve. Nothing happens, nothing must, and that, tonight, is more than enough. His feet shift slightly on the creaking wood floor. Somewhere a radiator groans, reminding you of childhood winters, or perhaps lifetimes ago, in a house full of stories that soaked into the wood. The present moment lingers, warm as bread, patient as lamplight. Pressed into these everyday details, toothpaste, wool socks, folded shirts, lies the quiet holiness of preparing for nothing in particular. There is a rhythm, a slow drifting lull. He opens a drawer with careful fingers, takes out a small journal, and lays it upon the quilt. Somewhere a clock ticks, not a sound of pressure, just a marker for gentle, inevitable movement. The kind of time that belongs to no one. The kind of time that makes it easy to rest. Just a little bit deeper. He waits by the window, and so do you. For the next while, let the voices of the day drift away. Let yourself dissolve quietly into these slow moments. No need to listen closely or remember details. The world outside has gone soft and blurry. And right now, all you need to do is feel the slow comfort of the present and remember that you are safe and welcome here in this gentle dream of an ordinary evening. The light dims, growing honey gold and quiet. The suitcase remains empty for now. Time pauses. The story waits for you to settle, to breathe, to let your thoughts grow slower and softer than ever before. He sips from the cup. The spoon clinks again. For now, that is enough. There's a certain hush before dawn in the old study where Ram Dass begins his day. The air weighs heavy, soft folds of silence pouring around each wooden edge, and the faded patchwork rug, blues and browns patched together, stitched by quiet memory. He's woken not by alarm, but by the soft groan of floorboards stretching out their dreams. A gentle ache in the world. The slow light creeps in, grey, uncertain, brushing the tips of well-worn slippers beside the narrow bed. Ram Dass sits up, feet flat against the cold grain of the floor, toes working through the familiar rug, mapping its raised threads, its little islands of softness. His breath is slow. He holds it for a moment, warm in his lungs, then lets it drift out. He listens to nothing, to the echo of sleep still tucked in the corners. It's quiet enough to hear the dust settle. A kettle sits waiting in the kitchen, metal reflecting last night's moon. He reaches for it, thumb smoothing over the dented handle, weighed down by the ache of other early mornings. Water hisses and murmurs, filling the dented metal. He moves in a rhythm, careful, grateful. As the kettle warms, he watches steam begin to curl. The soft halo of morning circles and circles, rising and vanishing. There's a wooden spoon nearby, its handle dark from decades of fingers. He taps it gently on the counter, like a bell. He wipes the kitchen window with a corner of his shirt, smudges gone but memories staying. Through the glass, the world is silver and slow. Fog thickens just outside, stretching across the field, a tartan shroud. Only the silhouettes of trees, and somewhere, a single bird calling once, then surrendering to stillness again. He presses his hand to the window. Cold seeps in, grounding him. Another breath. He watches air burst out, misting the glass, fading into nothing. He waits by the window. The kettle hisses, settling into a softer bubbling. He pours water over the tea leaves, gently, so they float, then spin, then sink. He watches their dance, little brown flecks, twirling and settling, remembered by sunrise after sunrise. The cup warms his palms. Fingers curl around it, grateful. He opens the small wooden jar, pinching a bit of honey from the comb, letting it twist and melt. He sips. Steam lingers on his lips, teasing open the edges of his morning. He sits at the heavy oak table, notebook waiting. Leather soft cover, worn smooth where his thumb always lands. He does not write yet. Instead, he lets the silence pool, thick and gentle, like cream poured over bread. The spoon clinks against the cup somewhere in the study. A small clock ticks, not loud enough to break the spell, just enough to remind him that time is quietly working, like roots underneath snow. There are pens in a glass jar on the desk. He turns one in his hand, feels the familiar ridges, the hint of ink smeared beneath the cap. Sometimes the pen rolls, bumping softly, circling back again. He waits for his mind to come home. He watches the dust in the sunbeam, slow motion dancers, aimless, golden. He traces circles with his finger on the tabletop, feeling for the groove where the wood split years ago. Familiar. Good. The room is lined with books, one shelf slightly warped, the volumes leaning on each other for support. He lets his eyes skim the titles, not reading, just recognizing old friends by their shapes. The scent is old paper and faded incense, something safe. Nothing happens, and that is enough. A small bowl of fruit sits by the sink. He chooses an apple, red, with a bruise shaped like a thumbprint. He runs water over it, watches shine bloom and retreat. He slices it, careful, savoring each crisp break. The knife finds the soft core, seeds rattling loose, rolling away, lost to the cracks of the wood below. He eats slowly, listening to the crunch, the microscopic avalanche of cells. Juice on his fingertips, sticky and sweet, remembered from summer orchards. He wipes his hand on a towel faded with age, stitched with initials he no longer recalls. He sits by the window again. He listens to his breath, slow, then slower, letting it fill and then empty everything inside. The cottage is still. The world is half dreamt. He lets time pass without needing to hold it. A piece of paper waits on the desk, blank, inviting, gentle. He smooths it flat, loving the way it holds no expectations. He does not write yet. He lets the silence tell the first story of the day. The air is cool through a cracked window. A shiver climbs his spine and settles, comfortable as an old sweater pulled close. He wears layers he does not name, a soft shirt, a shawl worn thin at the elbows, a ring slipped on, turned twice, then forgotten. Morning is a slow unfolding, a private ceremony, secret and sacred only to the one who remembers each step. He lets each gesture linger, stretching, settling, closing his eyes. He breathes again and lets the world be silent. He waits by the window. The morning light changes, but the shape of the table remains. A low wooden square, rimmed with old lacquer, marked by years of slow beginnings. Ram Dass sits beside it again, a loaf of bread on the edge, the crust dried out from last night's air. The window is slightly fogged, traced by the lines of his breath. He sits longer. There's no hurry, there's always more time in a silent room. He smooths the sleeve of his shirt. It's a kind of ritual, folding back the cuffs, adjusting the way the cloth touches his wrist. The world shrinks to this, just his hands creased and sure, moving over rough cotton. Some mornings a thread pulls loose. He finds it, tugs gently, then lets it be. The fabric holds. A kettle steams in the background. He listens for the first small bubble, the change of tone as hot water touches the tin sides. The scent carries, a memory of mint or maybe chamomile. He breathes it in, slow as the clouded light that seeps through old glass. He waits for the click. He waits by the window. The day begins the same, looping around itself. His pen sits in a dish of pebbles, the inky blue tip soft against the paper's edge. He smooths one sheet, then another, arranging them by touch more than by sight. He never hurries. There's dust along the sill, caught in the hairline cracks of paint. He brushes it away with a corner of his palm. Underneath is just more light, more surface. The spoon clinks against the cup. Everything repeats. There's a comfort in the repetition. The way bread is torn, the way tea is poured, the way pages pile and shift. Some are covered in small drifting notes. A phrase, a reminder, the curl of a thought that lands and stays for days. Sometimes he writes the same word twice, not noticing, not minding. He likes how the ink blooms on rough paper, thicker near the center, fading to a polite gray around the edges. He returns to the kitchen, where the old brown mug waits for him. There's a film around the rim now, a trace of yesterday's tea. He never scrubs it away, just rinses and fills it again. The mug, heavy and imperfect, fits his palm like memory itself, something always present, always a little worn. He places another stack of papers on the table. The sound is dull and steady, a thump, then silence. Some sheets flutter away from the pile, landing half off the edge, carried by a draft he doesn't feel. He leaves them there. Rhythm settles over the room, a slow hum. Clark hands tick, but he doesn't watch them. He fills his pen. The scent of ink is sharp, a little bitter. He writes a list, items to remember, questions to settle. Each letter is a small act of devotion, shaped by the same steady hand. The words themselves don't matter. Only the act of marking the page, pressing the nib into the weave. He takes a scrap of cloth and wipes down the table. There's a thin film of dust, pale, chalky, like the residue of old dreams. He wipes in small circles, never in a rush. When the surface shines in the faint sun, he sits back. He breathes. There is always another spot to clean, always another cup to fill. He waited by the window. The loop is gentle, not insistent. Breakfast, simple. Toast, sometimes an apple, cut in slow half-moons. The knife glides through, soft and sure. He places the slices on a plate, ceramic, chipped at the edge. The paint is blue, faded into rings. The floor creaks. He steps into the sound, letting it hold him. Every morning carries this weight, the same work, the same light returning. It isn't dull, not really. It's security, something that wraps itself around his shoulders like the warmth of an old sweater. Outside, branches drag against the glass. He listens. He peels back the curtain a little more, dust trailing off the hem, the air heavy with the trace of last night's rain. He sits again, the pen in hand, paper before him. He writes one line, then the next. Sometimes it's the same line, again and again, looping under his breath. The surface sticks to his skin, ink, dust, memory, all mingling into something you can't name, but somehow always know. Nothing happens, and that was enough. The air in Einstein's childhood home carried a softness, a hush as if the walls knew how to muffle the outside world. Mornings began with the slow exhalation of the radiator, mist at the edges of the window panes, always a gentle fog that never really left the corners of his room, just curled around the quiet wooden floorboards. He would sit with his hands cupped around a mug, cocoa, sometimes tea, and listen for the wind, the way it circled lazily down the street, uncertain, pausing often as if waiting to be invited in. There is a way that seasons enter lives, not as chapters or turns, but as a presence you notice out of the corner of your eye. Einstein learned to mark the hours by the shifting light, the amber glow in winter mornings, thin as honey, the full, unhurried sun that slung itself through the leaves in late spring. He watched the rain bead and race each other down the glass, the repetition becoming a rhythm. The world outside breathed in long, uneven sighs. His thought drifted with the clouds, unhurried, hands folding and unfolding quietly in his lap. He waited by the window, always waiting. He drew small shapes in the condensation with his thumb, watching the lines disappear and return. Sometimes, when the wind bent its body and rattled the eaves, he'd imagine himself as a candle, standing quietly against the draught, flickering, always steadying itself again. The fog was an old friend. Nothing happened, and that was enough. Afternoons lapsed into stillness. In the backyard, apple trees drowsed in slight breezes. leaves turning their pale undersides to the sun in a slow ballet. The scent of earth drifted in through an open crack, as if the garden itself was breathing with him. On days when the rain fell, he wrapped himself in a blanket, listening to the soft tap of water on the sill. The air felt thick, and he wondered how sound traveled through such a damp hush. He shuffled through routines, pencil marks on thick paper, the scratch and sigh of graphite as familiar as the ticking of a distant clock. Every day had its flavor, carried in the air, wet linen, candle smoke, the waxy tang of peeled fruit. Shadows lengthened early in the cold months, creeping gently across his desk. In summer, light hung on, trailing against the wall long past the hour of tea. The outside world changed the shape of his thoughts. He felt the seasons most when he was still, when his mind waited, cool and aware, like dew about to gather. Sometimes a breeze wandered in, playing with the edge of a page. He let it. He would lift his eyes, listening closely to the subtle shifting, air passing through, curtains breathing. He sat with this, the way one might sit with an old coat or a favorite stone found in the pocket. The weather was never just scenery. It was the low voice at the back of life, humming, reminding him to pause. He waited for the kettle. The world was larger in winter, as if every sound had to travel farther to reach him. He imagined thoughts drifting like smoke, slow and uncertain, curling up and away. Sometimes the world outside looked brittle, frost clinging to every branch, but inside everything was warm, measured, held together by the memory of voices down the hall and carpets soft beneath bare feet. Nothing happened, and that was enough. Outside, the wind changed directions, and inside, shadows shifted a little at a time. Candles burned down to stubs, pools of wax cooling in the silent air. Einstein moved through these changes the way one moves through a memory, gently, grateful for the hush. Some evenings he held a book, but mostly he held the quiet. He let it seep in, long and slow, until night arrived and tucked the world back into its ordinary shape. He sits in a quiet, butter-yellow kitchen as rain traces down the old glass. The house is barely stirring, as if it too is unsure whether to wake up fully or linger in the soft haze of a half-dream. He waits for the kettle to sigh, for the cup to warm beneath his steady hand. There isn't much sound, only the breath of his own aloneness and the distant hum of water against porcelain tile. Around the kitchen table there is space for four, but he sits alone. A book rests beside his cup, unopened. He feels the contours of the cup, curved, not quite smooth, warmth radiating outward just enough to fog his glasses. Someone once sat across from him, but this morning there is only the memory of laughter, like the echo of wind in a hallway. It lingers, but it does not press. It stays light, nearly invisible. He moves through the motions, bread toasting, jam spooned slow, stacking plates and wiping crumbs from their edges. He listens for a trace of voice in the next room, but there is none. The slippers tread soft, almost soundless, down the hall. No one corrects him. Nothing asks for explanation. Even the tea, as it steams upward in a thin, precise spiral, asks for nothing in return. He stands at the window. A tree outside sways, leafless, ancient, patient with itself. He pictures footsteps in shallow snow. There are none this morning. Only his own breath fogs the glass. He thinks of all the years he spent learning how not to fill every silence, letting each pause be a kind of prayer. There are no hurried words, no attempts to fill the air, just the steady presence of things, chair, cup, plate, sun fading down the wallpaper. He places the spoon beside the saucer. There's a softness to everything when no one is looking for winning or losing. The bench does not judge how long he lingers. The rug holds him as if it were woven for just this moment. His books make their silent chorus on the shelves, gentle companions in a world without expectation. There was once a time, and it echoes faintly now, when friction filled the hours, where every word was a rubbing together, a spark. Those days drifted, dissolved, like steam disappearing above hot tea. The house learned comfort in absence, a friendly emptiness. There is only the faintest outline where another's shadow used to settle across the doorway. The spoon clinked against the cup. Breakfast is finished. There is nothing left to say, and that feels good and whole. Even loneliness here is without weight. He wraps himself in a loose sweater, the fabric a shield from the world. But this armor is soft, barely needed. There is no enemy. His list of things to do is short, and none of them press against his heart. The echoes do not argue with him. The silence between objects is thick but gentle, like fog along the river at dawn. He stands by the door, the bag waits, half-packed, no rush. Socks folded in perfect pairs, a toothbrush lying patiently, untouched. Each item chosen not out of necessity, but out of kindness. He wonders for a moment about the days ahead, who he will see, who he may miss. Then the thought passes, the focus returns. The bag is just a bag. The day is just a day. He sits again beneath the window outside. The sky lightens slowly. There is enough time. Always he tells himself there is enough time. Even the ticking clock, long since slowed, offers its steady comfort. There is nothing to hold, nowhere to rush. He thinks of all the relationships he has known, friends, teachers, strangers, and he feels only their gentle presence floating among the objects in the room. They are echoes, not weights, softness, not sorrow. The shadow of the lamp stretches across the worn wooden floor. The rain slows. He listens to the nothingness, lets it fill the space instead of memory or longing, and for a long, silent moment he simply breathes. That is all, and that is enough. A day of nothing, a day that moves as gently as fog rolling over the meadow, silent and unmoving, and yet somehow everything. Imagine the quietness of such a day. Ram Dass rising not to an alarm, but to the slow unfurling of morning's first light. Nothing urgent, no ceremony. Just the hush of the world on pause. He sits at his window, knees drawn to his chest, worn blanket tucked beneath his chin outside. The trees are still. All the world is dull pearl grey, like a clean page waiting for nothing to be written. There is tea, there is steam, the kettle hums, nothing much happens, the spoon clinks against the mug, and that's enough. The taste of morning, slightly bitter, slightly warm, fills the cavity behind his teeth. He sits, sips, breathes in the plainness of air. The mundane is holy, he tells himself. Inhale, exhale, inhaling again, he cycles through blankness, aware of only toes curled atop a woolen rug, the tick of an old brass clock, the thrum of the radiator. Each sound echoes out its own slow permission to do nothing, to expect nothing, to need less and less. He stands, he gazes out, fog blunting the shape of every tree. The room is half shadow, half light. He walks with silent, socked steps, collecting not things, but moments, the hush of footfalls, the weight of his own exhale, softening the cold pane of window. Standing there, he's simply a figure, unmoving. The lamp buzzes on the table. The world is both near and impossibly far. He lets the thought repeat. A day of nothing is a day of peace. Breakfast, or something like it, comes slow, a crust of bread. Butter melting, slow as time. He watches it pool, thickening, shining, considers the plate, the straightness of the knife, the simplicity of doing little well. Each gesture is a liturgy. Cut, spread, fold. He chews. He feels the pause between each motion. He sits back, lets the silence return. Through the open kitchen door, he sees a slant of sun on old tile, grout gray, sunlit warmth, footprints from yesterday. He makes no effort to move quickly. Time is syrup. He moves through the day as a boat drifts through reeds, slowly, circling back and back again to the center of quiet. There is nothing to prepare, no one to impress. Ram Dass touches the wall, just to feel it, cool and unmoving, cups his palm against the grain, presses gently, finding presence in rough plaster. Every few minutes he glances up, noticing sameness. The chair is where it was, the glass still half full, the day still grey. It repeats, whispers, echoes, nothing happens, and that's enough. He walks to the window once more. To look is to return. The outside is exactly as it was, clouded, undefined, still. Birds tuck heads beneath wings atop a far ledge. A car idles somewhere he cannot see. The sound, a blurred hum. Clock ticks remind him of stillness, measured, slow, circular. He sits on the floor and watches his own hand move, palm tracing circles over slack denim. He lets his thoughts loop, 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 returning, soft as breath, to emptiness. He names the colors of the room aloud, voice hardly above a whisper. Blue-gray, dull white shadow. Each color is a lullaby. Each lullaby is a kind of forgetting. The world outside dissolves, becomes even more distant, and still nothing calls for him. The drift continues. Lunch, if it comes, is only a suggestion. Pear halves from a jar, spooned into a cracked bowl. He tastes sugar, bland and sweet, the sharpness of tin, the gentleness of fruit. The spoon rings, soft, circular, against ceramic. He sits longer, traces the rim with softened fingertips, as if by doing so the circuit of the day could close, but it doesn't. It only continues, round, round, round again. There is no hurry. He stands, stretches, a yawn that feels more like a sunrise than a gasp. Limbs loose, he lets himself sway in place. The world blurs at the edges. Afternoon is non-committal. He listens to the wind forget itself against the eaves. There is no plan, no list, only the practice of sitting, rising, returning. He folds the same blanket a dozen ways, opens and closes windows, letting in little gusts of sameness, listens for footsteps that never come. His reflection in the glass doubles, vanishes, returns. Nothing changes. Tea again. He pours not for thirst, but to mark another small cycle. The steam rises, a white ribbon, curling, vanishing. He sits quietly, cup warming both hands, gaze unfocused. For a moment he watches the shadows grow longer beneath the table. He smiles at nothing in particular. It is a day of nothing, a holy kind of repetition. And he waits by the window, and nothing happens, and that is enough. There is a small bag on the floor. How plain it looks. Canvas, soft edges, the faded blue from too many afternoon suns. A zipper that clicks when touched, thin leather on its tab, rubbed flat by years of fingers. It waits by the end of a narrow bed, patient as winter. The room is caught in a half-light, the kind that never quite belongs to day or evening. Nothing to say but silence. The shadows slide along the wall, paint curling a little above the old radiator. Outside, a quiet street breathes under the light press of morning, And in this space, this single, ordinary room, thought begins without shape or name. There is no story yet, only air and the scent of yesterday's incense stretched thin and ordinary. Ram Dass sits at the small desk, the plain wooden desk. He does not reach for the paper right away. There is the cup, warm, chipped. Steam paints a short-lived cloud above his tea. The spoon rests upon the saucer, cradled in its curve, forgotten. Hands rest, patient, on his knees. Time does not move here, not really. Just the faint throb of the heater and a window, old while holding back the city's hush. The bag waits, silent as the floorboards. He waits by the window. The sound of breath fills the air, more felt than heard. Not thoughts, just the small beginnings inside the body, small as the dust swirling near the lamp. Thoughts that come not as ideas, but as water rising slowly, settling in the unseen cracks. Nothing happens, not for a long time. That is the beginning. A shiver of candle flame, not for light, only rhythm, swirling wax, scentless, the wax drifting downward as if in prayer. The paper pad sits untouched, spine arched just a little from last night's cool air. He traces the zipper with one finger, no mind for lists, not yet. No weighing of needs or instructions, just the slowness of starting, of letting the old blue bag remind him that every journey, every packing, slips out from a space like this, where meaning is barely a whisper and memories have not asked for names. Is it possible to begin at all? Or is this the slow tide of what always was? This is how the hand comes to rest, flat, over the page. The mind does not race, not tonight. There is only the hum of a lamp in another room, and the drifting sleepiness of first thoughts, not even thoughts, only their weightless prelude. His breath turns the mug's steam sideways before the genius shapes itself. A lecture, a lesson, a story to carry. There is the near nothingness in this room. The bag on the bedpost, the candle bending to a draught, the pen rolling across bare wood. Each thing an echo, a shadow before speech. He watches his own footprints in the worn rug around him. The ordinary things wait for the names they'll never need. Faded photograph on the shelf. A folded jacket, always draped the same. No urgency, just small reminders, scents and corners and the grain of the desk. The mind opens but does not speak. It gathers. It listens, quieter than any teacher. Nothing happened, and that was enough. He is not remembering. He is not analyzing. He is not searching for meaning. In these small aches, the cushion slumped to one side, the bag not yet open, the paper translucently thin. Beginning is allowed to be so slow it almost forgets itself. A mug clinks against wood, a wrist turns, the hand lingers on bare space. Candlelight reaches along the table's seam. There are no sparks, no surges. It is simply the hand returning to its home place, the back settling into the old chair, the collar falling open at his throat. The mind is a gentle storm, not of thinking, but of waiting. He waits by the window. There is peace in not knowing what will come, only the slight hope of a new page finding its shape in the near future. And for now, there is the bag, the desk, the hold of this room around him. Every genius has this beginning, quiet as a prayer, dull as an unlit lamp, something not yet named, something not yet needed. He breathes, and the air holds him softly. Nothing happens, and that is enough. The house settles into its quiet geometry, and Ram Dass sits in the hush, a gentle teeter between the day's silence and echoes of life's laughter just beyond the walls. Morning, noon, and night seem sewn together here, each hour neither alone nor filled. The kettle sighs on the stove, steam painting the air. He lets the sound anchor him, rooted yet floating, surrounded yet solitary. Solitude and community, he thinks, are like two chairs placed across a small wooden table, never truly touching, always present. The early sun lays pale rectangles across the rug, slipping over old floorboards. He runs a palm along the wall, feels the cool stone, remembers laughter in the next room, warm and muffled. He could join them, or he could wait here, where his thoughts move slower than dust in a sunbeam. He listens for footsteps, but hears only the slow settling of the beams overhead. The air thickens with waiting, not longing. Nothing happens, and that is enough. Outside the window, morning glances in. The garden is empty except for the hush of green. Some days, friends arrive through the back door, arms full of stories and fruit. Their voices swirl and press against his solitude, bright and sharp like lemons on the tongue. He welcomes the noise, lets it fill the kitchen, then fade. There's always a place for another mug on the counter, another chair at the oak table. But even in company, he feels a soft, slow distance, a gentle edge between his inner world and theirs, too much togetherness, and he aches for stillness. Too much stillness, and he longs for even a shadow of a voice drifting through these halls. He keeps a small brass bell on the nightstand. Sometimes he rings it. Sometimes he only looks at it and listens for the memory of its chime. Connection, solitude, solitude, connection. The bell bridges the gap, if just for a moment, between being alone and being known. Sometimes a friend will sit beside him, neither speaking nor needing to. Eyes drift to the window. Breath sinks, the ancient quiet settles in like a blanket. For minutes or for hours, community is just the presence of another heartbeat in the room. No words needed. The teapot steams again. He pours, he waits, he listens. He waits by the window, steam curls upward, and so does he inside. Mornings, he's mostly alone with his thoughts. Afternoons, footfalls might pad the hallway, trailing gentle murmurs, doors opening and closing as lightly as feathers on glass. He senses the proximity, always a heartbeat away, yet also the invitation to turn inward to meet himself at the core. There is laughter, but even that wears soft shoes. Nothing breaks the quiet, not really. The world inside matches the hush of the world outside. He watches the flicker of dust. He sits with tea. He answers the occasional knock with a smile that feels like sunlight through frost, slow to melt, but warm underneath. They ask him questions about meditation, about remembering their true self, about why pain feels so persistent. He answers quietly, sometimes with words, sometimes with only a listening gaze. Each time he feels the gentle seesaw of solitude and company, a rhythm with no landing, only gentle swaying. He drifts into the hallway, runs fingers along the rough stone, a memory ground into the cool surface. Here laughter once echoed, there quiet shaped the air. He can't decide which he prefers. He chooses neither, hovering in the middle, balanced between the urge to reach out and the comfort of folding inward. Nothing happened, and that was enough. The afternoon lingers. Outside, shadow stretches across the lawn. A friend brings bread, its crust hard, inside soft as clouds. They eat quietly, a ritual as ordinary as sunrise, as sacred as dusk. The crackle and chew fills space where words once lived. Even bread, he thinks, knows how to be together and alone. He refills their cups. The spoon clinks against the cup some nights. The house is busy, voices skipping down the stairs, arms flung around shoulders. He enjoys the noise, the warmth weaving through hallways. Then, as the door shuts behind the last guest, silence tiptoes back in. He sits in his chair, feeling both emptier and more full. It is good, he thinks, to hold both, the press of people, the weight of aloneness, to keep company with laughter and shadows alike. The night is a blanket, the old bell is cool in his hand. Both longing and belonging touch his bones. He listens for movement. He inhales the shared, steady peace. The line between solitude and community softens, dissolves, until he no longer minds where he sits, with or without anyone beside him. Stones remember footsteps. Laughter lingers, distant but close. He is alone, never lonely, never crowded. Somewhere in the background, the ancient echo of togetherness remains, gentle like fog, always moving, always near enough to touch if needed, and always letting go, just so. There is a bag that waits at the end of Ram Dass's narrow hallway, not the kind of bag that asks for the world or promises adventure. It is a simple thing, worn by decades. Canvas faded into a gray that once was blue, with a soft leather handle and corners that curl like the corners of a sleeping child's mouth. Sometimes he sets the bag on the window bench, lets the stray afternoon light spill over it, catching on the thin line of dust that folds itself into the seams. Each fray in the stitching knows a story, though it never hurries to tell it. When he threads his fingers over the bag's handle, there is the memory of hands, younger, steadier, less measured by ache. The bag remembers all the quiet mornings before leaving, when he would lift it, not as luggage, but as a gentle promise. I will return here. I will remember this threshold, the exact shade of tile below my foot. He keeps a handkerchief inside one of the pockets. The handkerchief carries the scent of frankincense and old paper. Sometimes, sitting by the window, he will unfold it, let the corners rest by his wrists. There is a little tear at the edge, sewn up with blue thread years ago, too thick and stubborn, but holding. He waits beside the window. The bag is heavier now than when it was new, not from clothes or books, not even from the small bottle of oil he likes to pack, tucked deep in a hidden slot. The weight comes from accumulation, the slow gathering of ash and memory. Every notch in its leather, every fade on its canvas is a mark carried forward, a record of every gentle leaving and every softer return. Sometimes, in the pale light of dawn, he sees the years layered there, one atop another, like the thin pages of a sacred book. The bag does not shine. It absorbs. It carries the hush of trains at night, the trace of salt from tears, the odd crumb from bread broken with friends. It has been held tightly and left waiting in dark hotel closets. It has felt the cool air of morning and the heavy press of summer evenings. Nothing happened, and that was enough. There are small stains on the base, a splash of tea from a kindness given, a rust-brown mark from an old coin that lived inside the inner pocket, pressed there through lonely nights. Once a child traced his finger along the zipper, fascinated, wondering what secrets it kept. For years the zipper would stick, catching on nothing, as if remembering the pause of that small hand. He sits with the bag in his lap, breathing alongside it, as if the rhythm of their two existences could blend, the bag's silent patience meeting his own. Sometimes he finds himself tracing the seams, counting the stitches. He remembers his mother's sewing needle, the gentle hush of thread pulled through cloth. He lets his thumb circle the patched hole until it feels warm and smooth and inevitable. The bag holds moments, not in compartments, not in order, but as a deep, unseen reservoir. When he closes his eyes, He can feel the soft pulse of departure there, the still, unmoving quiet of places never to be visited again. Each journey a layer, each layer a thread leading home. He wraps the handle in his palm. The handle is soft, shaped to the curve of his hand. He does not rush. There is nowhere to go, not just yet. Ash gathers in the corners, the sort of ash no one sweeps away, bits of incense dust, a flake from an old photograph's edge. Some mornings the bag seems to disappear into the shadows by the window. When that happens, he lets it. He waits by the window. There is a longing inside every worn object, a slowness, a listening. Sometimes the bag seems to exhale, letting go of the journeys it once hurried to hold. There is no hurry now. Stillness collects in the leather, the kind of stillness that grows only when an object is kept, not for usefulness, but for love. The bag does not ache to be opened. It does not pretend to be more than it is. It simply holds the way hands hold hands softly for a long time. A symbolic anchor, old as breath and as ordinary as rain clouds passing over the roof. He sits a little longer beside the bag. The gold light on the wall grows dim. He watches the shape of the bag in the fading light and sees himself reflected, aging, marked by years, still carrying memory. Nothing stirs. Nothing urges him forward. The slow, faithful object, patient as prayer, sits silent, brimming with all that is gentle. He waits by the window, and the bag, that soft witness, waits with him. The lamp glows warmer here, in these rooms where the hours arrive softly and leave even softer. Ram Dass sits for a long while beside the lamp, hands resting on the thin cotton of his pants, the light pooling across his knuckles and the folds of his skin. Everything in this hour stretches out, so there's room for a longer breath, a pause without a need to start up again. Outside, darkness piles gently at the corners of the windows. Inside, time seems stalled, like a suitcase left half-packed on the edge of the bed. He breathes in, as if opening old books at their spine, and the silence feels bigger than memory now, lamps and breath, steady companions. The lamp stays. The breath deepens. With every exhale, he seems to blur a little further into the ribs of his chair. He allows his eyelids to fall, not all the way, but enough to shrink the brightness into a single golden thread. It flickers soft across the back of his hand, then disappears. The room accepts the silence, folding it over itself like an extra blanket in winter. A clock ticks with careful patience. Somewhere a pane of glass trembles against a slow, persistent wind, nothing urgent. No hurry. Tea sits cooling on the side table, steam barely rising. A ceremony that continues, even unattended. Ram Dass listens to the hush in it. The world seems emptied out and full all at once. Quiet is his companion now. It smells faintly of paper, lamp oil, and the whisper of old bedsheets. He lets it in, lets it soak through the walls of his small room and the spaciousness inside his chest. There are nights when slippered feet pad softly across the floor, each step a small permission. He walks to the dresser, fingers trailing across the wood, then back again to sit and watch the patterns of lamp and shadow tumble gently across the carpet. He waits for nothing. He lets each sigh surface, then settle again, a leaf on calm water. Sometimes age feels like a lamp dimming, but other times like a lantern lighting new corners. Tonight, the lamp throws kindness further than it did in his youth, making even the silence gentle. It spreads slow and easy across the doorframe, the handles of the suitcase, the silver at his temple. He remembers, with body more than mind, the quickness that used to fill his mornings, now replaced by spaces unhurried between footsteps, by a grateful noticing of the way his breath echoes just a little longer in the quiet on the bed. The overnight bag lies open, shirts and socks folded, toothbrush wrapped in a washcloth, one book turned face down upon a pair of slippers. Packing, he thinks, is different now. He folds slowly, pausing between each motion, as if blessing every article with silence before it slips away into the fabric. He sits back, exhaling, returning to the breath. Each inhale gathers up the day. Each exhale releases it like dust motes into dusk. He does not fear the brevity of a breath, but savors the stretch between, the space that grows wide and quiet around him, filling up with the hush of lamps and old prayers. Outside, the world moves, but so softly he can barely hear. The wind shifts. The lamp makes a small hum. Tea cools, the hour deepens. Everything continues, but at half speed now. A rhythm that meets him where he is, not where he was. In this gentle passage, time becomes less like a march and more like water left in a bowl overnight, perfectly still, with the moon's reflection bending at the rim. He notices sweetness in this unmoving surface, the way silence tastes thick and gentle, as if the world has nothing more to ask from him, nothing more to take, lamp and breath, lamp and breath. He lets them grow wide in his attention, wider than thought, wider than longing, until even memory is just a ripple, sometimes touching the edges, sometimes receding. Tonight, he is at ease with the unfinished. The bag half-zipped, the tea unfinished, the clock unwound. There's blessing in the unfinished. There's peace in letting silence finish the story for you, the settled light, the open bag, the drift of his breath. He sits in the middle of these, not lonely, not pressed, only suspended, as if the lamp and the breath could hold up the ceiling of the night, all by themselves. He waits by the lamp. Lamplight waits with him, neither in a hurry to be otherwise. And that somehow is enough. Down the hallway, night pooled in soft corners. Silence carried on its back an echo that knew every sound and every word that had ever been spoken here. The gentle movement of packing, shirts folded, a book slid into a cloth pouch, small objects resting against each other, settled down into the hush, a hush that now stretches, becoming less like ordinary quiet and more like soft wax melting around worry, folding it up, tucking it away. Ram Dass, drifting onto the edge of sleep, finds the edge begins to ripple. The patterns on the bag shift as though reflected in water, then resolve into something familiar. The weave of an old coat, a familiar doorway long vanished, footprints on the path outside his childhood home. These gentle distortions do not startle him. They feel like leaves spinning slowly at the surface of a pond, never landing or sinking, just circling and circling. The lamp light stretches across the floorboards, growing longer, rippling at the edges, each reflection a soft repetition of what came before. The feeling of the soft bag strap in his palm blends with memory and suggestion, wax and ripple, cloth and cloud. The sensation of being half packed, half asleep, lingers warmly, a veil overhead that is not quite blanket and not quite thought. The walls shade themselves toward blue and gray, with hints of green and violet, colors that exist very gently in the in-between, the space where nothing is sharp and everything is welcome. Ram Dass feels himself become slower, less pinned in place. The sleeping bag is a river's lap, a folded shirt is the sky. Even the buttons seem to hum, quietly holding the world in place with their small, weightless patience. He lingers there, a breath, then another. Wading in a room that flickers between what is present and what was once important, what still echoes across the distance. His book's spine softens, his thoughts wax, melt, ripple. None of it needs to complete itself. He hears the kettle story from childhood again. All stories run back to the beginning if you walk slowly enough. Steam curls through the space. Tea, candle, sleep, wax. Ripple upon ripple reaching out, folding back in. Honey dissolves in the cup, warmth moving quietly from rim to edge, silence carrying it around the curve of night. The window becomes a frame for clouds, for drifting lines, for other windows, for the memory of gloved hands fogging the glass. The bag is zipped and unzipped, zipped and unzipped. Sometimes he cannot remember whether he has finished, and it does not matter. Only the motion matters now. A hand finds the zipper. Another breath. The room gets larger and smaller all at once, like a dream within a dream. Everything is echo here. Nothing quite wants to be solid. The sound of the distant road slides in, car tires whispering against wet pavement, disappearing before the echo finishes. The gold clock on the dresser, ticking, ticking, then pausing. Even the ticking learns to echo, learns to dissolve into the next sound, into the soft hush of sheets being turned down. He waits without needing to wait. A ripple of memory stirs, then fades. Some objects are wrapped and some are left open-ended. The moth against the lampshade is both memory and present. The candle wax is river and road and sigh. Everything is touching and parting and blending, each thing an echo of itself. He feels the bag growing lighter, almost floating. The straps are clouds. The shoes by the door are puddles, ready to be stepped into and left behind. The world is neither here nor there, just drifting, just resting, just enough. He stands, but the standing is slow, as if time is syrup poured across everything. A new ripple, a new hush, a new drift. The layers of the evening fold back and forth. He is neither young nor old, neither here nor gone. Everything holds him softly, gently, in this borderland between waking and forgetting. Nothing happens, and that is enough. The bag is both packed and unpacked. The lamp is both on and off. The room is both his now and his from long ago. The night folds and unfolds, ripple and wax, echo and drift, gently holding him until even the story forgets its lines, and the only thing left is the soft sound of breath, returning him to himself. He waited by the window, and sleep, like a river, like a sigh, unfolds, again and again. The room fades. Where Ram Dass sits, the light is unhurried, stretching itself across the wooden floor. The suitcase, a modest companion, stays open at his feet. Inside, clothes folded and unfolded, a book with a pressed flower, a piece of twine he cannot remember the use of. He breathes on purpose. A gentle thing, like steam rising from tea. The kettle whistles, a quiet kind of song, circling the day toward its ending. He does not rush, not even for the sake of night. Everything he needs is already here, and nothing aches to be finished. Sleep, sleep comes like a tide coming in. The edge of the bed, the weight of a blanket, shapes dissolving. Ram Dass closes his eyes, not to shut anything out, just to rest from seeing, as one closes an old book for a while. The air drapes itself around him forgivingly, like a wool scarf about the shoulders. He sits back, letting his thoughts drift, folding, unfolding, a memory of a walk through wet grass, the peculiar softness of dusk when lamplight flickers outside a quiet, in the faint hum of silence in the spaces between words. He reaches into the suitcase, feeling for something gentle, a pair of reading glasses wrapped in a soft cloth. They are heavy with use, familiar. Their weight in his hand is a kind of good night. He waits by the window, clouds slide over the sky, smoothing the edges of moon and thought. In this hour, nobody asks, nobody answers. He watches light gather in the glass, letting it slip past him. The world is not in need of his attention. There is no list to check, no lesson left to give. He smiles, barely, a crease by his mouth, the ghost of a laugh. He moves with the slowness of night, the patience of old trees. Sleep deepens around him. The suitcase, always half packed, waits like a promise not meant for today. The zipper is cool under his fingers. Everything can be done tomorrow, though tomorrow, too, will come softly in its own slow time. He smooths his shirt against his knees, a little ritual as simple as breathing. The air smells faintly of sandalwood, warm paper, wool. Each scent rises, lingers, disappears. Waves upon waves, settling into hush. He glances at the clock. Even time seems to wait, uncertain, unwilling to move ahead too quickly. He listens to the hush beneath the ticking, feeling each second dissolve into shadow. Nothing happens, and that is enough. He remembers dimly moments from other voyages, the way an overnight bag gathers small tokens, pebbles from the garden path, an envelope with a friend's handwriting, a loose button. Each thing insignificant, each thing worth remembering. A sigh warms the room. Another, the slow ebb of a long day. He lets the open suitcase rest. He pulls the blanket tighter. He dreams of journeys that never leave the bed, journeys that fold gently, quietly into himself, packing and unpacking the mind, releasing small worries, letting them settle beside scarves and books. He listens to his own breathing, a lullaby sung without melody or plan. He hears far off the world's breathing too, the slow, ancient rhythm of everything winding down. The lamp hums faintly on the bedside table. Its light curves like a moon inside the room. He half raises his hand, then lets it fall, comforted by the small weight of being here. Outside, night presses its face to the glass. Inside, everything slows. The quiet shapes of things, the chair, the rug, the suitcase itself, grow softer, blurrier. He waits by the window. Nothing hurries. Even the dark, patient as bread rising on a shelf, takes its time to settle in. Sleep unpacks its softest things, a worn shirt, a tattered storybook, slippers with one thread loose. He lets himself be filled with the ordinary peace of not moving, the gentle patience of those who have traveled and returned again and again to the smallness of a single night. Breaths gather, then fade. A mantra slides in with the last drift of air, a whisper in his ear. You are loved, you are home, you can rest now. He folds this mantra and sets it tenderly inside the overnight bag where all good journeys begin and end. One last glance at the closing suitcase, one last hush from the window. Sleep comes, just sleep. Evening dusk gathers. The room is thick with softness, the warmth pressing quietly in corners, draping itself gently over pillows and silent tables. There is no one watching but the hush. Ram Dass, slow as rain clouds, stills his hands on the zipper of an overnight bag. There is no more to pack, just this space and a long ribbon of breath. He sits, worn corduroy pressing against the back of his knee. The light outside is blue. Nothing happens. He unlaces his shoes with the hush of someone smoothing down years. There is no hurry. There is the hum of the old radiator and the way one thumb finds another. Paused. In this hush glow, memory is not a line, but a circle. a spiraling river quiet weave of all the days before and coming. Kabbalists say, thread, spark, river. Three mantras hold the night, soft tapestries for the mind to wander. Thread, thread is every brush of linen, and tea poured slow traces. The thin connection of mornings and evenings, of waiting and returning. Ram Dass thinks of thread while folding socks, the way each action ties him back to every moment, every friend, every quiet look into a mirror. Thread holds the world, even when we forget it does. Thread means connection is never, ever lost. He waits by the window. There's a spark in every small thing. In the packed toothbrush, in the cracked window humming with wind, in the way the suitcase nestles heavy at the side of the chair. Spark is the shimmer of remembering, a flint striking light under old ash. Ram Dass smiles, barely, the gentle upturn of someone who knows how easily things go out and how gently they flare back. Spark is the best kind of noticing. Nothing happened, and that was enough. River, river is the way all these threads and sparks flow together, unhurried. Each day's bread dunked in tea, each shadow pressed into chilly morning. The river runs low and patient, infinite and plain. Ram Dass lets his eyes slide over the objects in his room. The mug, the photograph, the overnight bag half packed, half waiting. River collects them, bears them quietly into the next hour, the dark, the morning again. He rounds his shoulders. He listens for the ache that comes before rest. In Kabbalistic hush, there is a place for ending that is not goodbye. The soul gathers itself, thread-like, sparkling, a river going home. It is the end of a thought and the beginning of a deeper silence. Ram Dass breathes into the folds of his bag. The scent is old wool, cedar, the faintest echo of long ago incense. He lets himself belong to the hush. The spoon clinks against the cup. He repeats in the quiet, thread, spark, river. Each word a lull, an anchor, not to hold on, but to be held gently. The space inside the bag is the same as the space inside a dream, waiting, kind, shapeless. All that is packed holds light and emptiness too. Light is not hurried by nightfall, neither is rest. Ram Dass leans into the hush leans back. Kabbalistic integration means being here at the edge, the last zipper zipped, the last breath exhaled, the last pause stretching on and on, unbroken by effort or fear. Outside, the trees cradle the wind. He gives the world an ending that isn't an ending, a closing that is only a new hush. In the gentle repetition of mantra, his soul floated, thread, spark, river, letting each word do what it will, letting every quiet moment fold inside the next. There is no rush, no need to perform closure. The journey's echo lingers, gentle and imperturbable, the remembrance that nothing is ever truly left behind or forgotten. Thread, spark, river, sleep gathers in the silence, drawn to the sacred boredom, and nothing more is needed. He waited by the window, nothing happened, and that was enough. Thread, spark, river,